Have you ever wondered what happens when someone dedicates 17 years of their own life caring for another person's family? What you are about to discover happened on a sunny Tuesday morning in Atherton, California, and revealed a truth about sacrifice and loyalty that touched the hearts of millions of people around the world. At that exact moment, Sarah Mitchell was sitting in the Curry family office, her hands trembling as she held a resignation letter that she had rewritten 15 times. During the early morning hours, the familiar aroma of Colombian coffee hung in the air like a morning embrace, but this time it carried the heavy weight of farewell. To understand why a woman would dedicate 17 years of her life to a family and then leave breaking everyone's heart involved, we need to go back to the beginning of this extraordinary story. It was possible to feel the calm and organized energy that always characterized mornings at the Curry house. Sarah Mitchell, at 45 years old, moved through the house with the silent precision of someone who knew every detail, every preference, every need of an entire family. The soft sound of her nails tapping on the laptop keyboard echoed through the office like a familiar symphony that had been playing for almost 2 decades. "Sarah, have you already organized Isha's schedule for today?" Steph asked, entering the office with that warm smile that had won fans worldwide. But this time, he noticed something different in his personal assistant's expression. "Everything is ready, Steph," Sarah replied, her voice carrying a strange softness. "But I need to talk with you and Isha about something important." Some people dedicate their entire lives caring for others, forgetting to care for themselves, Sarah thought, looking at the man she had seen grow from a promising college student to a worldwide basketball legend. Naturally, this leads us to perceive something profound about dedication. There are people in this world who become invisible pillars in the lives of others, sustaining dreams and ambitions without ever questioning the personal price they pay for this choice. Sarah Mitchell was exactly this type of person, and her story was about to reveal the true meaning of the word sacrifice. The Curry house breathed success and harmony. Trophies gleamed discreetly on the shelves. Photos of a smiling family decorated the walls, and everything was organized with the perfection that only someone truly dedicated could maintain. Sarah had been the invisible architect of this perfection for 17 consecutive years. When Isha came down the stairs, her steps creating a familiar rhythm on the wooden floor, Sarah felt her heart accelerate like a drum before an important performance. How is it possible that saying goodbye to a family you helped build is more difficult than any other decision in life? "Good morning, Sarah," Isha said, with that genuine affection she always showed. "You look different today. Is everything all right?" Sarah took a deep breath, smelling the scent of the house that had become more familiar than her own house. "Actually, everything is not all right. I need to talk with both of you about a very difficult decision I've made." It's impossible not to feel the tension that settled in the environment at that moment. Steph and Isha looked at each other with that silent communication that only couples who know each other deeply can have. Both, instantly, realized that something fundamental was about to change. "Sarah, you're scaring us," Steph said, pulling a chair to sit closer to her. "What's happening?" Sarah held the letter between her hands as if it were something sacred and terrible at the same time. "Steph, Isha, after 17 years by your side, after seeing this family grow and flourish, I need to resign." The silence that followed was so profound that it was possible to hear each person's heart in the room beating in different rhythms. Isha brought her hand to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears instantly. Steph remained completely motionless, as if the words didn't make sense in his mind. Resignation? Isha whispered. Sarah, you are family to us. You can't be serious. How many times in life do we encounter moments where simple words have the power to transform everything we know? Sarah Mitchell was about to reveal a truth she had kept in silence for 17 years. A truth about the real price of absolute dedication. I know it's shocking, Sarah continued, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. You are my family too. But the time has come when I need to take care of my own family, my own life. Steph leaned forward, trying to process the information. Sarah, if it's about money, about working conditions, we can talk. You know I would do anything for you. It's not about money, Steph, Sarah replied, finally looking directly into his eyes. It's about something much more complicated than that. It's about the choices I made, the sacrifices you don't even know I made, and the life I never lived because I was living yours. Some people dedicate their entire lives caring for others, forgetting to care for themselves, and Sarah Mitchell was about to reveal exactly what that meant in practice. What would come next would forever change how the Currys understood loyalty, gratitude, and the true price of success. But what happened next would reveal a truth about personal sacrifice that none of them were prepared to hear. Sarah, you need to explain to us what's really happening, Isha said, sitting beside her on the sofa. 17 years don't disappear overnight. We are a family. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if she were gathering courage to open a door she had kept locked for years. It's exactly because you are my family that this is so difficult. But you need to understand that during all these years, I never had a life of my own. You can perceive that there are moments in life where someone needs to speak truths that have been silenced for so long that they physically hurt when coming out. Sarah Mitchell was about to reveal the real price of her unquestionable dedication. What do you mean, never had a life of your own? Steph asked, genuinely confused. Sarah, you were always free to do whatever you wanted in your free time. A bitter laugh escaped from Sarah's lips, loaded with years of silent resignation. Free time? Steph, when was the last time you called me during a weekend? Or during vacation? Or in the middle of the night, because you needed something? The embarrassing silence that followed answered the question better than any words. It was possible to feel the painful understanding beginning to form in both their minds, like morning fog dissipating to reveal a landscape that had always been there, but had never really been seen. I always answered, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength like a current that breaks a dam. Always. For 17 years, I never said no to you. I never put my needs first. And do you know why? Because I believed that was the definition of loyalty. Isha held Sarah's hand, tears now flowing freely down her face like rain on glass. Sarah, we never asked you to sacrifice your personal life. You didn't need to ask, Sarah interrupted gently, her voice carrying the softness of someone who forgives even when it hurts. I offered. I chose. And for a long time, I thought I was doing the right thing. Naturally, this leads us to reflect on how many people around us make silent sacrifices that we don't even notice. Sarah Mitchell was revealing a universal truth about dedication. Sometimes, what we think is loyalty becomes a voluntary prison that we build with our own hands. Do you remember when James Wilson proposed to me 10 years ago? Sarah asked, her voice loaded with deep melancholy like an autumn lake. You were on a 3-month promotional tour in Asia. and I chose to accompany you instead of planning my wedding." Steph and Isha looked at each other, the memory returning like a punch in the stomach, bringing with it the weight of all the implications they had ignored at the time. James Wilson ended the engagement 2 weeks later, Sarah continued, each word weighing like melted lead in the air. "He said he couldn't compete with a family that wasn't even mine. And do you know what's saddest? He was completely right. It's impossible not to feel the crushing weight of the revelation. For years, while the Currys built their dream life brick by brick, Sarah Mitchell was systematically deconstructing her own, choice by choice, priority by priority. "And my mother?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking for the first time like fine crystal hit by a stone. "How many times did I cancel visits because you needed me? How many of her calls did I let ring because I was solving something urgent for this family?" The air in the Ipoh office was heavy like liquid lead. Isha was crying openly now, finally understanding the magnitude of what Sarah had given up for them, without ever asking for anything in return. How devastating is it when we realize that while we were focused on our own happiness, someone close was facing the biggest crisis of their life, in total silence? Steph felt as if a crushing weight had settled in his chest, making each breath difficult. "My mother, Sonia Mitchell, has early dementia," Sarah revealed, the words coming out like a painful confession of sins she had never committed. "She was diagnosed 8 months ago. She is 72 years old and is losing pieces of herself every day, like leaves falling from a tree in winter." "Sarah, why didn't you tell us?" Isha asked, her voice choked with pure emotion. "Because for 17 years, I learned that my role was to solve your problems, not create others," Sarah replied with brutal honesty that cut through the air like a sharp blade. "You had seasons, games, children, careers. My sick mother would just be another problem for me to manage alone, silently, as I always did." How many times do we assume that people around us are fine, simply because they always seem to have everything under control? Sarah Mitchell had become so competent at caring for others that everyone forgot she was also a human being who needed care. "She doesn't recognize me anymore most days," Sarah admitted, each word cutting like glass. "When she recognizes me, she asks why I never visit her, why I don't take care of her like she took care of me. And do you know what answer I always give? That I'm working. Always working." Steph stood up and walked to the window, unable to face Sarah's gaze at that moment. His entire career had been built on the concept of teamwork, but he was discovering that he had completely failed to be a teammate to the person who had contributed most to his success. "And do you know what's most ironic?" Sarah asked, a sad smile crossing her face like a ray of sunlight on a cloudy day. "My mother used to say I was the most dedicated daughter in the world. If she knew that I dedicated my life to other people's children—" Some people dedicate their entire lives caring for others, forgetting to care for themselves. And Sarah Mitchell was finally facing the devastating consequences of this choice. What would come next would test the true values of a family that had prospered thanks to the silent sacrifice of an haute extraordinary woman. Nobody could imagine that that moment would be the turning point that would completely redefine the meaning of family and loyalty. "Sarah, I feel terrible," Steph said, his voice loaded with guilt that seemed physically heavy, like stones in the stomach. "How could we be so blind? How didn't we notice that you were sacrificing your entire life for us?" Sarah looked at him with an expression that mixed forgiveness and infinite sadness, like an ocean in a storm that slowly calms. "Because you weren't raised to notice, Steph. I became so efficient at being invisible that you forgot I was a real person, with real needs, with my own dreams. You can perceive that there is a devastating difference between being valued for what you do and being seen for who you are. For 17 years, Sarah Mitchell had been the first, but rarely the second, and this distinction had slowly corroded her own identity. "But we value you, Sarah," Isha protested, wiping tears with the desperation of someone who wants to undo the past. "You are essential to our family. You always have been. Essential to function, not to belong," Sarah corrected gently, each word chosen with the precision of a surgeon. "There's a brutal difference between the two things. When you travel as a family, I organize the trip, but stay home. When you celebrate achievements, I photograph the moments, but I'm not in the photos. When you make important decisions about the family, you consult me about logistics, never about opinion." The silence that followed was so profound that it seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. It was possible to hear each person's heart beating in different rhythms, processing a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for almost 2 decades. "During all these years," Sarah continued, her voice gaining a strength they had never heard before, "you treated me like the best employee in the world. But I needed to be treated like family. And that difference literally cost me my own family. Naturally, this leads us to a painful reflection on how we define human relationships. There is a thin line between caring for someone and being responsible for their happiness, between being loyal and being invisible, between serving with love and simply existing to serve. "Sarah, we thought you were happy," Steph said, his voice almost a broken whisper. "You always seemed content, always smiling, always willing to help." "Because that was my function," Sarah replied, a solitary tear rolling down her face like rain on a window. "To be the person who solves everything, who never complains, who never has her own problems, who never bothers. I became so good at this role that even I believed it was real, that it was who I really was." How devastating is it when we realize that someone we love was playing a role instead of living an authentic life? Isha felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, leaving her falling into an abyss of belated understanding. "My mother asked me yesterday, in one of her lucid moments, if I have children," Sarah revealed, each word cutting like a sharp blade in the silence. "Do you know what I answered? That I take care of 4 wonderful children, but they're not mine." And then she looked at me with that terrible clarity of dementia and asked why I never had children of my own. The question hung in the air like toxic smoke. Steph and Isha knew the answer, but neither had the courage to verbalize it, because that would make everything too real, too painful. "I answered that I never had time," Sarah continued, her voice breaking like a dry branch. "I never had a stable enough relationship. I never allowed myself to dream of my own family because I was too busy, too dedicated, too lost building yours." It's impossible not to feel the crushing weight of cruel irony. While Steph and Isha lived the American dream of the perfect family, surrounded by love and fulfillment, Sarah, dramatically destroying any chance of having the same dream for herself. "And do you know what my mother's response was?" Sarah asked, a sad and devastating smile crossing her face. "She looked at me with that wisdom that sometimes comes with dementia and said, 'Daughter, you spent your entire life being a mother to other people's children, but you never allowed anyone to be a father to yours. How do you expect to be happy like this?'" The impact of these words was like a gunshot, in absolute silence. Isha sobbed openly, finally understanding the nuclear magnitude of what Sarah had lost. Steph had to lean against the wall, feeling his legs weaken under the weight of the revelation. "Sarah, forgive us," Isha begged, her voice choked with desperation. "Forgive our blindness, our unconscious selfishness." "There's nothing to forgive," Sarah replied, with a gentleness that made everything even more painful, more devastating. "You didn't do anything wrong intentionally. Was the one who chose to disappear in my own life. But now, at 45 years old, I realized something terrible. If I don't make a drastic decision now, I'm going to die without ever having really lived." How many times in life do we reach a point where we need to choose between the security of the known and the absolute courage of the unknown? Sarah Mitchell was facing exactly that moment, and the decision was more terrifying than anything she had ever faced. "My mother has, at most, 2 years of lucidity ahead," Sarah revealed, her voice gaining a determination they had never heard before. 2 years for me to try to recover the relationship I neglected for 17 years. 2 years for her to know me as her real daughter, not as the famous assistant who rarely shows up. Steph finally found his voice again, although it sounded strangled. "Sarah, is there something we can do? Some way to help without you having to leave our family?" Sarah looked at him with an expression that mixed deep love and unshakable determination. "Steph, you are my chosen family, and you always will be. But my mother is my blood family, my original responsibility, and for the first time in 17 years, I need to have the courage to choose myself. Some people dedicate their entire lives caring for others, forgetting to care for themselves. Sarah Mitchell had finally reached the moment where this choice became a matter of emotional life or death. And what would happen next would test whether true love is capable of putting the other's well-being above one's own comfort and convenience. And it was then that the truth finally came to light about what it means to be truly family. Steph Curry remained silent for a long moment, observing the woman who had been the invisible pillar of his life for almost 2 decades. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an emotion he rarely showed off the courts, a raw vulnerability that came straight from the heart. "Sarah, you're right. We were selfish. Not just blind, but deeply selfish. And now I understand that true love is not accepting that someone sacrifices themselves for you. It's ensuring that this person has their own life to live and flourish." Isha held Sarah's hands between hers, looking directly into her eyes with an intensity that burned like gentle fire. "Sarah, I'm going to make a proposal. But first I want you to know something fundamental. It's not pity. It's not guilt. It's love. Real family love. The kind I should have shown a long time ago. You can perceive that there are moments in life where people reveal who they really are through their actions when they can gain nothing personally in return. What the Currys would do next would forever define the type of people they were beyond the cameras, spotlights, and fame. "I don't want your resignation," Steph said, with a firmness that cut through the air like a declaration of war against injustice. "I want your leave. Paid leave, full salary, for as a beefy long as you need. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years if necessary, for you to take care of your mother and discover who Sarah Mitchell is when she's not exclusively caring for the Currys." Sarah looked at him with total disbelief, as if he were speaking a foreign language. "Steph, you can't pay me to not work." "We can, and we will," Isha interrupted with fierce determination. "Sarah, you gave up 17 years of your life for us. 17 years of salaries you could have earned elsewhere, promotions you could have received, relationships you could have built, children you could have had. It's impossible to calculate the real value of what you gave us, but we can try to start honoring it. Naturally, this leads us to realize that true wealth is not measured only in money or professional success, but in the ability to recognize and value those who silently contribute to our happiness. Steph and Isha were finally understanding the monumental difference between having someone work for you and having someone live for you. Besides, Steph continued, standing up and walking to the desk where he picked up the phone, I'm going to hire the best caregivers specialized in dementia for your mother. Not as charity, but as recognition and responsibility. Sonia Mitchell is the mother of the woman who helped raise our children, who sacrificed her own motherhood for them. She deserves the best care money can buy. The tears that Sarah had held back for so long, for so many years of silent resignation, finally began to flow freely like a dam that finally breaks. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's the minimum, Isha said, with a firmness that admitted no discussion. Sarah, for 17 years, you were our silent partner in everything, our invisible foundation. Now we want to be partners in your life too, in the way we always should have been. How transformative is it when we realize that giving generously can be as powerful and necessary as receiving? Gratefully, the Currys were discovering that supporting Sarah wasn't a favor they were doing, but their own emotional necessity, a way to finally align their actions with their values. Steph stood up and walked to the desk, returning with a contract that he began to modify right there, writing by hand. I'm going to create a new position especially for you. Family Wellness Consultant. Completely remote work. Totally flexible schedule. Salary increased by 60%. Your only responsibility will be to advise us when we need it, on your time, on your terms, from your home. And more, Isha added, her voice choked with sincere emotion. We want to meet your mother. We want Sonia Mitchell to know that her daughter is not just our employee, but our family. Riley, Ryan, Cannon, and Caius deserve to know the extraordinary woman who raised the person who helped them grow with so much love. How many times in life does a difficult conversation transform into the moment that completely redefines the nature of a relationship, transforming pain into healing? Sarah Mitchell was experiencing exactly that, and the feeling was simultaneously liberating and terrifying. You don't understand, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. I don't know how to live for myself anymore. It's been so long that I only exist for other people, that I forgot how to have my own desires. Then we'll learn together, Steph said, with a gentleness that melted all barriers. Sarah, you taught us how to be a functional family. Now, let us help you discover how to be a complete individual, how to live your own extraordinary life. The office door opened silently, and Riley, the Currys' eldest daughter, peeked inside with that natural curiosity of children. Sorry to interrupt, but why is Aunt Sarah crying? Sarah's heart melted completely when she heard the word aunt. During all these years, the children had instinctively understood something that the adults needed a devastating crisis to realize. Sarah wasn't just an employee, she was chosen blood family. I'm fine, dear, Sarah said, opening her arms to Riley with a genuine smile for the first time in months. We're just having a very important conversation about real family. Cannon and Ryan appeared behind their sister, followed by Caius in a nanny's arms. Is Aunt Sarah going away? Cannon asked, with that brutal honesty of children that cuts straight to the heart. "No, my love," Sarah replied, finally smiling with a light that had been extinguished for years. "Aunt Sarah is going to stay, but now she's going to be a real aunt, not just a work aunt. And you're going to meet my mother, Grandma Sonia." 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell was sitting in the sunny garden of a nursing home specialized in dementia, holding her mother's hand. Sonia Mitchell. It was a golden autumn afternoon, and for the first time in many months, Sonia's eyes were clear and completely present. "Daughter," Sonia said softly, her voice loaded with precious lucidity. "You look different. Lighter. More alive." Sarah smiled, watching the Curry children playing in the garden with her mother, teaching her games they learned at school. Steph and Isha were talking with other family members, sharing resources and tips about specialized care. "I am different, Mom. I finally learned the difference between living for others and living with others." "And what's the difference, my daughter?" Sonia asked, her eyes shining with that curiosity that had always characterized her personality. "Living for others is slowly disappearing," Sarah replied, her voice loaded with wisdom conquered with pain. "Living with others is flourishing together. It's growing while helping others grow. Some people dedicate their entire lives caring for others, forgetting to care for themselves." Sarah Mitchell had discovered that true care is only sustainable and genuine when we first take care of ourselves. And in the process, she had transformed not only her own life, but completely redefined what it means to be family for everyone around her. That golden afternoon, watching her mother laugh with the children she had helped raise, Sarah finally understood that she had found the perfect balance. A life where she could be a daughter, aunt, friend, consultant, and, for the first time in 17 years, simply and completely Sarah.